wanted to have kind of like that fairy tale, I guess, lifestyle or life, with a husband and kids, multiple kids, at least 3, 4. And, I guess you think everything is just going to happen that way.
Yeah. And how old were you when you tried the first time?
So I got married, and then when I had my first child, I was 30, 31, 31.
Okay. And how long did it take for you to get pregnant?
Almost a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know why, or did you?
So I have endometriosis.
Okay.
So I have endometriosis, and then actually, my ex-husband and I, we got married in May of 2016, and in February of 2016, so the anniversary is actually coming up on the 16th. I went in for surgery for my endometriosis. I had a routine laparoscopy scheduled, and where they kind of go in and clean everything out. And they found that my right ovary was mangled and very red, inflamed, and I was having chronic pain on that side.
Mhm.
So they actually removed my right ovary during that surgery. So again, this is, February of 2016, and I was getting married in May of 2016. So it was just wild.
Wow. And what were your thoughts around when that happened?
So uh, so it was very mixed emotions, because I I was in so much pain that I would have given anything to not live in that with that pain, and that's like with diet changes and exercise and chiropractors and acupuncture and holistic, functional medicine, and trying birth control, trying to get off birth control. I tried everything, and I was always in chronic pain, and I was getting cysts. So was, I felt hopeful that them removing my one ovary would kind of take care of some of that pain. But then also, I knew I wanted kids. So, I was really scared that, would I be able to get pregnant with only one ovary? But my ex-husband, his mom, it was adopted. So we had discussed, if we couldn't have kids, that we would adopt. But then, yeah, we ended up getting pregnant 3 times, actually, 3 times. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
And do you know like what was the cause? Have you ever discussed it with your doctor? What could have caused in your case that kind of complications?
It was my endometriosis. I don't know if do you know what that is?
Yes, I not very good. I don't, but I have an idea what it is.
Yeah, so it's when tissue similar to the lining of the inside of the uterus grows on the outside of the uterus as well. And it's so when you get your period every month, you're shedding that liner, and it's also tries to shed on the outside. So it can end up anywhere, your bowels, your ovaries. It can end up, some women have had it in their lungs. Like, it can go basically anywhere, and it's extremely painful. So it's a horrible disease.
Wow.
So
And
yeah.
so every month, obviously, when you have your period, that happens. And then does it involve any kind of, do you have to see a doctor when that happens or every?
No, I've had not every month, but it has happened where I've ended up in the hospital, and they had to give me, morphine because the pain was so bad. I've had 4 surgeries, because what happens is, like, your body can't get rid of it, so they actually have to go in and get it out, clean it out for you, because you also get scar tissue on the inside of your uterus. So they have to go in and they have to kind of like clean you out basically.
Wow.
So yeah.
I'm sorry to hear
Wild.
that you had to go.
No, and it's okay, because it's sad, because it affects a lot of women and it's not well known at all. You know, you go up
Yeah.
to anybody on the street and say, "Do you know what endometriosis is?" And half the people will not have not even heard of it. Some
Yeah.
people have heard of it, but they don't know, what it really entails. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Good. And so how long did it take for you to recover after the surgery once
So I would say about, it was like 6 weeks. Like
okay.
6 weeks when I was, home. I had to do a lot of like massage around my scars, and kind of just take it easy, because your body's already producing, you already have scar tissue because of the endometriosis, and now you basically have a controlled knife wound. Any surgery is basically just a controlled knife wound. So
Yeah.
now you're having that, and which is going to create more scar tissue. So I did like a lot of scar massage to break it up, make sure I wasn't developing, more scar tissue, and then yeah, just kind of taking it easy, around the house and whatnot.
Right. And after that, when did you start trying?
So that was February of 16, and I didn't go back on birth control. We knew we were getting married in May. So I basically said, we were basically like, well, if we get pregnant, we get pregnant. And it wasn't until the following July that I found out I was pregnant. So July
Mm,
of 2017
okay.
is
Right.
when I found out I was pregnant with my first.
Naturally, everything. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. That's
I
yeah.
know. Yeah.
I think
Which is
um
wild.
and how did the pregnancy go?
It was great. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I was never sick with him.
Yeah.
It was just like I don't know, like I didn't have morning sickness. I felt like a little nauseous, like when I would go to the grocery store, and walk through like where they have the seafood or like the cold cuts, like the deli type of stuff. That stuff really like churned my stomach.
Yeah.
Um, but I wasn't sick with him. It was like a perfect pregnancy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And you when closer to the 9th month, how were you feeling around that time?
Good, nervous. It was my first, and
Oh,
so he came 2 weeks early.
okay.
So yeah, I was asleep, and all of a sudden, and it's your first time going into labor, so you don't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Everyone can tell you like, oh, it feels this type of pain or that type of pain, but I actually thought I was getting like a stomach virus, because it felt like I had to go to the bathroom, like have a bowel movement.
Oh,
So I
really?
kept getting up. I was sleeping on the couch. I was just really uncomfortable. But it was 2 weeks till my due
Yeah.
date. So I didn't really think much of it. And then all of a sudden I was like, ooh, I think I remember I lost my mucus plug, and I was like,
Great.
and then I called the doctor, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in labor. And then, yeah.
Okay, so did you start having some sort of contractions when you
Yes.
lost your mucus? Okay. All
Yes.
right.
Then the contractions really started, and I was actually in labor with him for 38 hours.
Wow, that's
38
long.
hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So for a while, long time. And I pushed for about 3 hours. But then his heart rate, I was doing okay, but his heart rate kept dropping. So they actually took me in for a C-section, and the cord was around his neck.
Mm.
So I wasn't able to, I was pushing, and every time I would push, his heart rate would drop, because he was trying to come out, but the cord was around his neck. So they ended up bringing me in first. They were like, listen, you've been pushing for so long. And I was getting so tired. And yeah, then they brought me in for the C-section.
Okay. So you started having contractions and then you went to the hospital. When you got to the hospital, how long was the interval between the contractions?
They were still pretty far apart. I'm trying to think. They were at least 10 minutes apart.
Okay.
If not a little bit more when I first went to the hospital. And they were like, "You're definitely in labor, but the contractions aren't close enough, so we're going to send you home."
Oh, no.
So
And
I went
you
home.
go home? You did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously it started getting, faster and shorter, the interval's getting, and then you went back again?
I went back again and I was like, "Listen, well, I went back because I thought my water had broke, um, but I had actually just peed because I was coming down from a contraction. I was having a contraction.
Oh,
I
right.
was
Okay.
coming
So
down from the contraction,
yeah.
and I peed, but I
Yeah.
thought my water had broken. So I went to the hospital, and they were like, "Nope, you didn't break." So, but then they were like, "We're just going to admit you because we're not going to send you home again."
So at that point, did they do ultrasound? Like, did they see at that point that the cord was or there or
No, no, they didn't. They didn't know. I mean, everything was going so well. At that point, in the beginning of labor, everything was going so well. Like, I was having contractions and of course, and I was in pain, but my heart rate was good at that point. His heart rate was good. I was starting to dilate. So yeah, they had no reason to believe like anything was wrong.
how did they find out that the cord was around
They
his
didn't know the cord was around his neck until they cut me open for the C-section.
Oh, okay. So they sent you C-section because of the heart rate and not because they didn't know at that point there was a cord.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess it's one of those things that, when the heart rate drops, probably it's one of those reasons could be that the cord is around the neck. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. And
Yeah.
um, so when the pushing started, the when your body starts pushing, um, was it scary? What was your
So
stage?
at that point, like I said, I had been in labor for about 35 hours. I was just, I just wanted him out. I just wanted to be done with it. And at that point, I had gone a really long time without medication. I really wanted to have a natural birth so badly, but then I was so exhausted. And the doctor really said, she's like, "Michelle, I really think you need an epidural." And I pushed it I just kept like refusing it. And then finally I was like, you're so tired. I was tired and I was in so much pain. And then it was just the contractions were getting worse and worse and worse. And so then I did accept the epidural. So that helped. And then, they kind of, did you have an epidural with yours?
No.
No. Oh my gosh.
No, for me it was horror. It was
Oh,
extremely horrifying. The pain, it's just hard to explain. I never thought it would be. It's just the most horrifying pain. For me, very traumatizing. Although everything went fine.
yeah, I
Doctor
know. But
said
even,
everything
oh my
went.
gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, giving birth in and of itself is,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I can't
traumatizing.
imagine being 38 hours. Like for me, it was like 12 hours and I was horrified. So I'm like double horrified for you being in so much pain for that
I
long.
know, I know. And then they give you the epidural and you're like, it's like euphoria.
Really?
You're like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
So, and then because then every time I was having contractions and they were getting really bad, I was vomiting like with every contraction and everything like that. And this was after,
Why?
over a day of doing that. So
Oh, so you started vomiting after having epidural? Is it
no, no,
connected?
no, before the epidural. So that
Oh,
was part
before
of the
the-
other reason too. I was just vomiting, vomiting, vomiting,
But why does that happen?
They were saying sometimes just the pain for some people is so bad that your body just kind of is like, just, you know,
Yeah,
wants to
yeah.
excrete everything just to, get rid
Wow.
of the pain.
And right, so then they sent you after 38 hours, they sent you to C-section. And
Yeah.
what was it like?
At that point, when she said, Michelle, you've been pushing for 3 hours. It's been a ridiculously long labor. His heart rate is dropping. Of course, you worry about your child. So I was like, okay, like if that's what and I trust that. So this is the other thing. I chose to have midwives instead of OBs. And I loved my midwife, loved them. So midwives, it's a organization. And I just trusted them so much. So when the OB, the midwife consulted with the OB, and they both came in and they were like, Michelle, listen, you've been in labor for so long, you've been pushing for 3 hours, his heart rate's dropping, let's do the C-section. I was just like, okay, like if that's what you guys recommend, and he's really obviously not coming out on his own, then let's do it. So
Right. Okay. And so how was it, the C-section?
it
Were
was
you
okay.
awake?
I had been in surgery before for like my laparoscopies and stuff, so I was definitely not a stranger to the operating room. So they put the sheet up, so you can't see anything. And so thankfully I had already had the epidural, because, or else they would have had to given me, like at that point they would have had to give me a spinal or another epidural. I'm not sure which one. And so I had already been numb, because of that. So they gave me a little bit more medication, and yeah, they kind of just cut me open. But they said it was like a pretty routine C-section, really nothing. They said they could see a little bit of the endometriosis, but it wasn't really that bad. My second C-section was really, really bad. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And right. And then you had your baby on your chest.
Yes. Yeah. And
How did it
he
feel
was good.
after?
His first APGAR score was an 8. So he was good. He came out, he was, he pretty much cried right away. They weighed him, and then they brought him, he was a little jaundiced. So they brought him right to the special care nursery, but my husband at the time was able to go with him. So yeah, he was able to be there because this was like pre-COVID and everything. So they were able to be together. And then I spent like however long, 20 minutes, whatever, I spent for them to close me up. And then they wheeled me to recovery. And then we had, skin to
Bonding.
skin, and he nursed. Oh, and it was just like, oh, the best thing ever.
Yeah. Um, so, and then you started breastfeeding right away, or
Yep.
how long did it take for you to be able to breastfeed?
Yeah. With him, it happened, pretty much right,
Yeah.
like right off the bat. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I
It was
heard for
pretty
some
easy.
reason that C-section usually, takes some
Sometimes,
time.
but they think my milk came in so fast because of how long I was in labor.
Oh,
So
okay.
because it wasn't a scheduled C-section, like
Oh,
with a scheduled
right.
C-section, your body's like, oh, I gave birth, there's a
Right.
baby here now.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I went into labor naturally. So
Okay,
yeah.
understood. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so your second time was during the pandemic, right?
It was. So I got pregnant. Um, it would have been like January of 2020. So this was right
Right.
before the world stopped.